All right, welcome to This Explainer. Let's just jump right in because today we're unpacking something literally mind-bending. I'm talking about one of the most fascinating historical and honestly scientific anomalies on the entire planet, the legendary Iron Pillar of Delhi. For centuries, this massive, towering piece of metal has stood as a total mystery. It's captured the imagination of historians, scientists, tourists, you name it. It's a monument that basically looks like it defies the laws of nature. We're going to trace its whole journey from being this historical enigma wrapped up in myth straight through to an absolute game changer of a scientific revelation. It's a story that challenges everything we thought we knew about ancient tech. I am so excited to guide you through the evidence today, so let's get to it. 1600. I want you to just take a second and let that sink in. 1,600 years. That is how long this iron structure has been standing there through blistering intense heat, pounding monsoon rains, and whipping winds. Think about everything this piece of metal has been through since the Gupta era. I mean, it's outlasted entire empires, it's watched centuries of human history unfold right around it, and it's taken literally the absolute worst the environment could throw at it. If you left any ordinary piece of iron outside like that, a fraction of that time would be an absolute death sentence. It would just be gone. And yet, there it is, still standing. Which leads us to the ultimate question, right? Why on earth hasn't it rusted? Look, we all know what happens to iron when you leave it out in the yard. It oxidizes, gets all orange and flaky, and eventually it just crumbles into dust. But the Delhi Iron Pillar, it has flat out refused to do that. And this seemingly impossible survival has baffled people for so long that it actually sparked some wildly creative myths. For a long time, people genuinely thought, okay, magic has to be involved here. Or, maybe aliens built it and just left it behind because a rust-proof pillar just seemed completely beyond human capability.
So, moving on to section 4. Who was King Chandra?
To actually solve this puzzle, we gotta step away from the alien theories and look at the real, hard historical clues. Before we figure out how it was built, we need to ask who built it and where it even came from. Well, etched right into the metal of the pillar itself is this ancient inscription, and it specifically calls out a mysterious ruler named King Chandra. Now, this isn't some folklore passed down through the grapevine. This is a primary source carved right into the monument. It's a huge clue that grounds this pillar deeply in ancient history. It pulls us out of the supernatural speculation and brings us right back down to the actual human beings who forged this thing. But you know how ancient history works. Just because you have a name carved in metal doesn't mean you have the whole story.
And that brings us right into a massive historical debate. The inscription gives us a name, sure, but is this King Chandra actually the famous ruler Chandragupta II? A lot of historians do point to him, but we have to be super clear here. This is fiercely debated. It's a really strong possibility, but it is not a confirmed fact. On top of that, there are all these competing theories about where the pillar was originally built and how it eventually ended up in Delhi. Did it always stand there, or was it hauled across the country by leader rulers? Again, these are all fascinating possibilities, but the exact timeline is still heavily disputed in academic circles. We kind of have to embrace the mystery here and recognize these as debated claims, not absolute certainties.
Which brings us to section 7, magic, aliens, or science. Okay, so we've touched on the historical disputes, we've nodded to the alien conspiracies, but now it's time to pivot to the actual groundbreaking science that explains this whole phenomenon. We're leaving speculation behind and diving headfirst into metallurgy. Because when you stack ordinary iron up against the Delhi pillar, there is a massive plot twist. Ordinary iron? It rusts quickly, nonstop, until it's just destroyed. But the pillar? Actually, scratch that myth you might have heard. It actually does rust. The idea that it's completely rust-proof is flat out false. The trick is that it just has an extremely high resistance to corrosion. So to the naked eye, it looks immortal. The real question isn't why doesn't it rust at all, but rather, what on earth is slowing the rust down so drastically?
And that takes us to section 9, the metallurgy secret revealed.
This is where we uncover the true genius behind the pillar. The real, undeniable answer to this 1,600-year-old anomaly isn't magic, and no, it isn't extraterrestrial. It is incredibly sophisticated ancient Indian metallurgy that was just light years ahead of its time. The big secret? It all comes down to something called a protective passive film. In plain English, this is basically a microscopic, specialized barrier that naturally forms right on the surface of the iron. Once this film forms, it acts like a microscopic shield. It literally seals the iron underneath, locking out the oxygen and moisture from the environment that would normally trigger that continuous, destructive rust. It's almost like the pillar generates its own permanent suit of armor. But how exactly did these ancient metallurgists get this specific piece of iron to form this incredible shield?
So, how did these ancient artisans actually pull this off? Well, it boils down to three crucial factors, all working together in perfect harmony. First up, they used iron that had an unusually high amount of phosphorus in it. Second, their specific forge welding techniques, meaning the exact way they heated and hammered the metal together, helped to distribute those elements perfectly throughout the structure. And finally, number three, the wet and dry environmental cycles. Over the centuries, Delhi's specific climate, which constantly flips between soaking wet monsoon rains and intense dry heat, interacted with that high phosphorus forge-welded iron. This unique combo of human craftsmanship and environmental conditions actually triggered the formation of that protective film. It's literally a perfect chemical reaction that was set in motion over a millennia and a half ago.
All right, moving to section 12, engineering, not magic.
When we pull all this evidence together, it is just abundantly clear that this is a stunning testament to advanced ancient Indian engineering. This wasn't the work of supernatural forces. The artisans of the Gupta era had an unbelievably sophisticated understanding of materials. Sure, they might have described it a bit differently than modern chemists do today, but they built something designed to last for eternity, using science that we've only fully wrapped our heads around in recent times. Which leaves us with this final kind of mind-blowing thought. If ancient engineers were capable of creating a towering iron monument that can just shrug off the elements for 1,600 years, what other ancient scientific marvels are hiding in plain sight? What other magical artifacts out there are just sitting around, waiting for us to uncover the advanced engineering behind them? It really makes you look at history not as this primitive past, but as this deep, fascinating well of lost knowledge just